Welcome to the Work Positive Podcast with your host, executive coach, and culture architect, Dr. Joey Faucette. Discover strategies and tactics that work positive as Dr. Joey talks with industry leaders who create a positive work culture that attracts top talent and reduces team turnover. Discover how you can create a work positive culture that increases productivity and profits. Here's your host, Dr. Joey.
Hey, Work Positive Nation, do you love to be sold to? Do you wake up in the morning and go, man, I hope somebody calls me that I don't know and they try to sell me today? Doesn't that just make for a wonderful day? Or I hope I get an email from like Nigeria saying that I won the lottery and they want my bank information put in there, right? You don't wake up thinking that? Well, hey, guess what? I don't either. My first sales experience was as a 9-year-old in August in Eastern North Carolina, where it was 100 degrees and 100% humidity. And I was selling Christmas cards door to door. But wait, there's more. They weren't just any Christmas cards. They were inscribed Christmas cards. In other words, you could get your family's name printed in them. Nowadays, it's a big deal if you get a handwritten Christmas card, right? Well, back then, you could actually order them from the Sales Leadership Club. Man, I got a 3-speed bike, a telescope, a cassette recorder. Just told you how old I am, didn't I? Well, anyway, sales, the sales profession is one that might have taken a few hits along the way. Why? My guest today thinks it's deserved if you're functioning out of a culture that is what he refers to as an empty suit culture. Now, I absolutely love that phrase. What does it mean? Hey, you get to find out today. My guest has written Selling from the Heart, which is a runaway bestseller. It's available everywhere finer books are sold. It's also available from sellingfromtheheart.net/book. You can grab a copy there, and oh, by the way, he'll sign it for you. Not inscribed, but signed, right? Work Positive Nation, help me welcome my brother from another mother. And if you're watching the video of this, you see why, Larry Levine. Larry, welcome to the Work Positive Podcast, man. I love you, brother. How are you?
Oh, I love you too, Joey. I've been looking forward to this, but I just got to share something. Okay. You went door to door. I just have to share this quick story, though, if you'll allow me, I work from a home office. So usually I try to wrap up mid part of the afternoon. I'm on the West Coast, so I try to wrap up 3:30, 4 o'clock. I usually try to wind the day down.
Sure.
And it seems like I've had a rash of people knocking at my door recently, and they've all been door-to-door solar salespeople. Young kids, right? But here's what's interesting. Just because I love everything about sales, and I'm never going to hang up on somebody. I'm never going to not give somebody an opportunity if they knock at the door. Sure. I'll listen to them and I'll be polite, and I'll just politely say no, thank you. Well, this one young gentleman knocks on the door a couple weeks ago. And he was just so polite. I wasn't interested in solar, right? I will be at a certain time. It's just not the right time. So we spoke again. And all of a sudden, I found myself giving this person sales advice. Joey, true story, right? So here's what's interesting. I'll keep this short so we can get in the meat of your podcast. And he goes, do you have any advice for me? Serious young kid, really nice guy. I gave him some advice. He goes, well, what do you do for a living? Right. And so I shared it with him. And I said, I have a podcast. I've written a book, Selling from the Heart. He goes, serious? He goes, where can I find the book? I go to sellingfromtheheart.net/book. He did. I sent him a signed one.
That's beautiful.
Here's what happened next. Literally, this just happened last week. He knocks at my door late in the afternoon. He goes, I'm not here to sell you solar. I know how you feel about it. I read your book and I loved it. And I just wanted to say thank you.
Oh, my God.
But isn't that interesting? How many times do we get people knocking at the door that we're rude to? There's always a positive side to every interaction, just how you choose to carry yourself.
When you turn away from being an empty suit and actually care about people and are authentic with them, right? Which is the heart of selling from the heart.
It is.
So I loved your book, man. So this is not just a book you wrote or a podcast that you host. This is really who you are, isn't it, Larry?
This is who I am. I've often quoted over and over and over again, authenticity is a lifestyle. It's not a light switch. And I believe in my heart, we're authentic human beings. It's how you choose to carry yourself. And we can carry ourselves being true, genuine, staying true to our values. We can lead that lifestyle, or we can choose to lead it an opposite way. I just know what will happen if you lead it the opposite way. And it's just how I've chose to lead my life.
Yeah. So what happens if I'm an empty suit and I lead it that way, Larry?
I think people smell it really quick. And I'm not a psychologist. I mean, I love everything about sales, but I believe that, I mean, we all know we have there's five senses and so forth. We've all learned that through school, but there's a sixth sense that people have. Yeah. And it's the sixth sense of BS.
Yeah,
and I think it's at an all-time high. And I've always shared this. You can't scientifically prove this, but once you hear this, you know where I'm going with this. Is people sense when you're being real. Yeah. People sense when you're being honest with them. People sense sincerity, but real fast, the flip side of that happens is, especially now, people sense for, are you being real? Are you being truthful? Yep. That's being placed up on a silver business platter right now. And they can sense it. Their radar's up at an all-time high with all of this.
Oh, it is. And man, we see our governments, whether it's state or federal, we just see them unraveling right now, right? Because people aren't telling the truth and they're inauthentic, and they'll tell you what they think the lie that they want you to buy, right? I mean, that's
here's what's interesting is there's a lot of thought leaders I follow, and I get a lot of, daily emails that come in that I funnel them into my personal email. But I follow a guy by the name of Darren Hardy. I'm sure you might have heard of Darren Hardy before. He was the publisher of Success Magazine. Exactly. And this goes back, I'm going to say about a year ago, but it just triggered, as we were talking about this, it triggered a thought. Sure. He had a daily email that came in. And it was a video along with a message. The video is probably 4 or 5 minutes, but this was the crux of the message. Follow along with me on this one, because I think this is so true. He goes, I believe it's easier to be inauthentic than authentic.
Oh, 100%.
Think about that one for a moment in society, whether you're a sales professional or a sales leader leading a sales team. It's easier to be inauthentic than it is to be authentic. And that's sad, though.
Yeah, it is sad, but we know that today, and that's why our BS meters are so sensitive. I mean,
yes, sir.
Mine goes off in the first 30 seconds, right? And I'm, and so I'm just like, I don't have time for this.
Yeah.
But man, to be authentic, like the young man on your doorstep, right? First of all, the courage of that guy, and then I love the fact that you loved and respected him. So how do let's say I'm a sales manager, right? And I'm trying to create a culture. We call it work positive culture. You call it selling from the heart, right? That kind of positive culture where salespeople are authentic. How do I attract top talent? That is, salespeople who are authentic, who do put others' needs before their own. How do I attract them to my team, Larry?
I think it starts with doing some inner work. So I'm looking at this. I'm going to look at this through the lens of a couple different ways, if you allow me to, Joey. Okay. I'm going to share through the lens of a salesperson for a second, and then I'm going to share through the lens of a sales leader. So I'm going to give you my response as if I'm a sales professional. Okay. Because, I spent almost 30 years selling office technology. So I sold copiers in Los Angeles my whole entire career. And I was on some of the most dysfunctional sales teams with some of the most dysfunctional sales managers. And this would always run through my head. I wish that sales manager truly actually cared about me. And leaned into me and looked at me as a human, as opposed to a salesperson who has to drive sales to hit a monthly number. Now, I get that's important. As a salesperson, we have to sell things. We're benchmarked against certain things. I totally get that. Sure. But the whole time I'm in my sales career, I never had a manager that truly cared about me. And we talk about it's easier to be inauthentic and it's easier to be fake. I had a lot of fake sales managers who would pretend like they wanted to get to know me and all that. And just as I would start to unload a little personal stuff, somehow it always came back to me, right? Today we'll call that, psychological safety and things like that. Back then we didn't know that was the term.
Right.
But as a sales professional, I'm looking for a leader who truly cares about me, has my best interests in heart. At Selling from the Heart, we just call it giving a rip. So if we flip this around and now I look at, I'm a sales leader, how do I attract those people? Well, it's how I carry myself. It's the words I use. It's the messaging I use. And I always say it's leaning in. It's how you lean into your people. And I've always said this, it's leaders who lead with the heart soon develop a sales culture that sells from the heart.
Yes.
And I always talk about, you got to be congruent. As a sales leader, you got to be congruent. If your walk matches your talk.
Yes.
So in other words, how you carry yourself face to face matches. Now, keying on this, how you carry yourself online. See, we're in this digitally driven world.
Right.
So as a sales leader, people are looking at you in many different facets, and they're looking at you through many different lenses. So if that face-to-face persona doesn't match that online persona, salespeople are pretty smart. We can poke holes at salespeople all day long, but they are pretty smart. Just as your buyers will sense BS, your salespeople are going to sense it just as fast.
Oh, absolutely.
And when they latch on to sales leaders who truly care about them, who give a rip, who have their best interests at heart, who lean into them, want to see them succeed, understand their why, what makes them tick, where they want to take their career, and that sales leader helps them get there. Watch how those salespeople run through brick walls. But conversely, watch how salespeople then go, you know what? You got to come over here because I have a sales leader that you won't believe what this person does.
Yeah. And it has that trickle down effect when I, as a sales leader, give a rip about our team, right? And I'm caring for them and I'm leaning in and I'm being authentic with them and making sure their needs are getting met in what I refer to as redefining work, right?
Sure.
When I'm redefining work to a selling from the heart or work positive culture within that company, guess what they do for the clients and potential clients?
Yep.
The same thing, right? It's that ripple effect. And it doesn't just trickle down, it gushes, right? Because it stands in such stark contrast to the empty suits around us. So, Larry, I hear you say it, right?
I love hearing Joey Faucette roll out the empty suit. I love it.
Not that I've ever been around a few.
I can't remember the last time I've worn a suit, but we all get the picture.
Dude, I went to a funeral the other day. I actually put on a suit and a tie, and I'm like,
oh, Lord.
Okay, this is what it's come to, only at funerals, right? But, yeah, I mean, we've all been around those empty suits. So here's what I hear you saying, that the way to attract top talent and build that kind of selling from the heart sales culture, right, is to, first of all, do the inner work. So rather than recruiting salespeople, you're attracting them. And it's that authentic core value that attracts them, the antithesis of an empty suit, right? And so they then tell their friends, hey, you ain't going to believe this. This guy gives a rip, and then they come. So the key to attracting a top talent sales driven team is to do the inner work and become authentic in who it is that you want to work with. Okay, so let's say,
hey, can I just throw something on top of this just for a moment, if you allow me to? I just want to take it one step farther, and I think this will really help. Is when some people might go, well, doing the inner work, what's that mean? We have to really truly uncover who we are. And I'm not here to say we don't know who we are, but a lot of people really don't know who they are because they're too afraid to go down those avenues to uncover it.
Yeah.
And I'm a big believer here at Selling from the Heart. It's about alignment of values. If you ever want to get into some really great conversation, if you want to attract like-minded people, understand what your core values are and understand the core values of your salespeople. Where do they intersect at? Where do they don't intersect at, which would mean, hey, this is what we can work on. So when you understand your core values and you put it out there, Think about like attracts like. And I'm a massive believer that when your values align with your salespeople's values, or when your values align with a potential candidate's values, watch what starts to happen to the conversation and the connection.
Boy, it's safe, first of all, and there's a whole lot of trust that builds out. We in Work Positive Nation talk about three things for that attraction factor, and that's the first one, core values, that alignment between the core values of the company and the core values of the individual. Second thing we talk about are priorities. What's important to you? What drives you? What's your purpose? What's your why? Simon Sinek would say, right? Sure. And the third thing is, what's your unique contribution? Because in these teams of sales-driven people, we want Larry to be able to do this really well. We want Joey to be able to do this really well. We want Jane to be able to do that really well. And then those puzzle pieces fit together, right? Because we're all around those same values. We have the same priorities. Same things are important to us. That's when the magic really starts to happen, right? That's when you have a team that's just humming on all cylinders and really out there taking care of people, and they're authentic, and the suits are gone right there in the closet back somewhere. So Larry, I've got this top talent sales team, right? They're selling from the heart. How do I keep them? Because, it's easy, not that I've ever had this happen to me, but it's easy to date somebody hard, get them on the team, say all the right things, and then, man, just forget who they are or walk away from them, or, I dated you hard, now we're married. Okay, sure. We're married. So how do I keep top talent on my team?
You got to consistently invest in them. And here's what I mean by consistently investing in them. I'm all about sales training. I'm all about sales coaching. Yes. And if we go down this training angle for a moment, here's what I see happen. I've walked through it. I've literally walked through it in my career selling office technology. Is there's only so much product training. There's only so much service training. There's only so much company training, piecing deals together training. I think y'all know where I'm going with this. There's only so much of that you can do before salespeople tune out. If we're just being real on this.
Yeah, it's cognitive overload, man.
If you really want, as a sales leader, if you really want to help your salespeople grow, it's really simple. It's a rhyme, but this will play out. The more you know about your salespeople, the more you'll grow with your salespeople. The more you learn about your salespeople, the more you'll earn from your salespeople.
Wow. That's strong. How do I do that? How do I get to know them? How do I learn them, Larry, at its best?
You got to be willing to take the time, and you got to be really to be sincere, and you got to be willing to sit down with them, look them in the eye, and find out what makes them tick. Where do they see themselves 6 months from now? What are they like doing outside of work? Where do they see themselves 3 years from now? Where do they see themselves 9 months from now? What are they like doing personally outside of work? What makes them come alive? Little things like this. It's the people skills and the relational skills that are sorely lacking. And when, as a sales leader, if your people skills and relational skills are sorely lacking, it comes through in your salespeople. And I'm a big believer in this. And again, I believe we're all products of our environment. We're products of how we were raised.
Yep.
Well, now think about this from a sales culture. We're products in the environments we're raised in.
Yes, sir.
And as a sales leader, there's certain things you can control, and there's certain things you can't control. What you can control is how you show up. And you can control that, and you can control how you interact with your salespeople. And the more comfortable that you can make your salespeople feel about you, the more comfortable they'll become with you. The more comfortable they become with you, the more they'll open up to you, and the more they'll be willing to run through a brick wall for you. It's the people skills and relationship building skills. And these are the two things I think are sorely lacking. So if sales leaders can internally develop that with themselves and then carry that over to their sales team, watch what starts to happen. I just call this speed to heart.
Wow. Speed to heart. That's amazing. That's amazing. That's a mic drop right there. Larry Levine from sellingfromtheheart.net is my guest today, Work Positive Nation. He's authentic. He's not wearing a suit. Even if he was, it's not empty. Man, this dude's got a heart overflowing with goodness. So, man, as a sales leader, that means I got to spend less time with a spreadsheet and more time with people.
There's way too many sales managers and leaders that are desk jockeys.
Yeah, exactly. You remind me of what my favorite business philosopher Jim Rohn used to say. You're the average of the 5 persons you spend the most time with.
Yeah. Oh, I tell you what, if people don't know who Jim Rohn is, you just go to YouTube, right? Just go to YouTube and watch this guy in action. One of the class acts. I'm a big believer that what's forever old is forever new. And a lot of his stuff is as relevant today as it's ever been.
It's ever relevant today because we're awash in a sea of BS, right?
Yeah.
And we just need some truth spoken to us. And Jim Rohn, man, he was a truth speaker. Darren Hardy was 100 years ago when I was a young man. Success Magazine was the first one to really introduce me to Jim Rohn. And he's my favorite business philosophy. Napoleon Hill was another, right? What's Old is New. And certainly his most famous book, right? But then there's another one. I think you've been reading it lately. If I saw you posting about it, wasn't that the 17 Success Laws, or I forget the exact title now?
Yeah, it's right here. It's the law. It's the law of success. Yeah, but in it, it's the 16 laws of success. 16. Okay. It's what Napoleon Hill uncovered when he went on his journey to interview all the influential people and wealthiest people back in the early 1900s. Right.
And Think and Grow Rich was kind of the short version of the laws of success. Yeah. So, man, that's awesome. I absolutely love that. So let's say that I'm doing some inner work, right? And I'm I'm becoming authentic as a sales leader, as a sales professional. I've joined a team where people seem to care about you. And let's say that we're consistently learning and earning. We're growing. Okay, all these good things are happening. What kind of challenges, Larry, am I going to experience at that point? Because, I'm doing the right things. Then what are going to be some challenges for me?
I'd say this. I think the biggest challenge is how do you keep it going?
Wow. Keep the momentum flowing. You
have to keep the momentum flowing. And it's I believe this because I walk through it on sales teams is the minute a sales leader or sales manager, insert title of some management people, is the minute they let their foot off the gas pedal on something, shortly thereafter, it starts going out the window. And it's why sales training, insert whatever the training is, when people keep going back, right? You implement something, it works for a little bit, you see some success, and I go, okay, well, we're just going to take a hiatus. We're going to take a vacation from this. And then pretty soon you all go back to doing what you were doing before.
Sure.
Bring somebody back in and you do the same thing. And then you let the foot off the gas. You bring the same person back in a year later and you do the same thing. So I think the biggest challenge for sales leaders out there is how do you keep this thing going? And that's the discipline behind this. And this is the accountability behind this. And if you all can keep doing this and doing this and doing this, you'll maintain that positive work culture. It'll become a heartfelt work culture. I have a very close friend of mine who's a VP of sales in a plumbing wholesaler company. Right? Not the most sexiest industry out there.
Yeah, no.
But he's one of us. He's a servant-minded, heartfelt sales leader who waves the flag.
Until your toilet malfunctions, and when your toilet starts backing up, then wholesale plumbing gets real important. And that's coming from a guy with the last name of Faucette. So I know about these
remind me before we end this podcast, I got to tell you a funny story about Faucette. But it's hilarious. We can end with this.
That'll go in the blooper reels. Okay.
But I really believe this because my friend has grown his sales team from 5 people to almost 25 people in a couple years, and he's kept his foot on the gas pedal on heart, building camaraderie, building authentic sales cultures. He doesn't let his foot off the gas. He's attracting the right kind of salespeople. His salespeople are spreading the message, and they talk about it every single day, and he leans in, and he's never going to take his foot off the gas.
Wow.
I think that's the biggest challenge to sales leaders is once you start developing all this, you got to keep it going, and you got to keep it going, and you got to keep it going. Sure. And if you don't, and the minute you tap the brake, it's over.
Yeah, you're done because you're losing momentum. You're reminding me of what a friend of mine, Seth Green, says. He's from Market Domination. He's my podcasting partner. He talks about consistency and reciprocity. Those are two principles that you got to build in. And so you're really nailing that consistency right there. You just got to do the work day in and day out. And I think, Larry, it then becomes a part of who you are at a cellular level. And so you don't have to remind yourself, hey, I gotta keep my foot on the gas, You just do it, man. It becomes a part of who you are. So you shed the empty suit, right? And you come to sell from the heart, and it's just authentic. It's real. It's not manufactured. It's just who you are. So consistency becomes a non-issue at that point because you've done those other things to become who you want to attract, and you become who you want to retain.
Here's the sad part. This is the part that really concerns me is, and I write about it in Selling from the Heart, whether you're a sales manager, sales leader, or sales professional, is you have to maintain consistency. And that's the self-discipline. You got to hold yourself personally accountable to some non-negotiables. But on the flip side of this is that's why so many in sales are consistently inconsistent. They see some success with it. They see some success and they go, right on, right? Let me just tap the brake a little bit, right? I'm going to cruise a little bit. And then all of a sudden they go back. Then they bring some consistency. Then they let it off. They're inconsistent in all this. It's just that you have to double down, whether you're a sales leader, sales professional, you want to develop this culture. You want to see monumental sales success. Bring consistency, bring accountability. Bring discipline to the forefront, lean into your people, give a rip about your people, watch what starts to happen. This isn't rocket science stuff. This is developing people skills and relationship building skills. But yet it's so difficult for a lot of people to understand because they go, how do I put an ROI on this? But a lot of times at Selling from the Heart, we talk about soft skills yield hard dollars.
Yes.
And if you're a sales leader, key in on that. Soft skills yield hard dollars.
I'm writing that down. Soft skills yield hard dollars. That'll be in the show notes, Work Positive Nation, in case you're walking the dog or on the Peloton or something. Soft skills yield hard dollars. Man, I think that should be the name of this episode of Work Positive Podcast. Soft skills yield hard dollars. Hey, Warren, did you get that? All right, man. Larry Levine is my guest. Sellingfromtheheart.net is the site. Larry, we've mentioned your book several times, but I really can't emphasize enough, Work Positive Nation, that you go get this book. Regardless of whether or not your culture experience at work is within a sales team, whether you're a sales professional, sales leader, or manager, it doesn't matter. Larry's got some ways of explaining these core values, as you've heard today, that you're going to want more of. So go to sellingfromtheheart.net/book and pick up your copy, and Larry will sign it for you there. Larry, Work Positive Nation always wants to know from my guests, what's one thing they can do today to create a positive work culture? One thing, Larry. What is it?
I would say this is create a coach/mentor culture inside your company. And you might be going, well, where are you going with this? Create pods of salespeople and have mentors mentor other people. Start building leaders inside your team. You're the coach. Create I'll call them little smaller coaches, and create pods. Create pods of people. So say, for instance, we'll just say you have a small team. Say you have a sales team of 10.
Okay.
Break them into 5s. You're the coach. Find a smaller coach. They become the coach for the other 4 people. You create pods and you mentor these people along. and watch what starts to happen to the culture of your sales team.
Well, we know coaching is the best way to create a positive work culture, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Gary Ridge, the chairman and CEO of WD-40, and I were chatting the other day during one of these podcasts. They actually renamed, they no longer have managers. They renamed them coaches, which is massive, I think. Because anytime you put a name on something, then you live up and into it. So there's your one thing to do today, Work Positive Nation, so that you too can sell from the heart and create a culture within your company that sells from the heart, and a culture that's certainly positive. And man, that's the kind of place I want to get up and come to work.
So, heck yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, brother. Larry Levine, sellingfromtheheart.net. Larry, thank you, man. Every time I'm with you, I learn something and I have a good time. I don't think it gets any better than that, right?
No, I love hanging out with Joey Faucette.
It's always my pleasure. It's always a party when we're together, right? We got to get Daryl Amy on here with us too, because he loves a good time.
Lord knows what would happen if all three of us got together. Oh boy.
Yeah, we've done that on the Selling from the Heart podcast, right?
Yeah, so, we sure have.
Yeah, so you can check that out. But if we get Daryl on here, it's going to have to be more than a 30-minute program. It's going to have to be at least an hour program, because Daryl's always got something to add, right?
Oh, yes, he does. Yes, he does.
Sellingfromtheheart.net/book. Go get your copy of Larry Levine's book, Selling from the Heart, and it'll be a better life and a better work life for you. Thanks so much, my friend. I appreciate you. I love you, and I look forward to our next
Joey.
Conversation.
My pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Work Positive Podcast with your host, executive coach, and culture architect, Dr. Joey Faucette. Please share this podcast with your friends who are small business leaders so they can create a positive work culture that increases their productivity and profits. Get your free 15-point Work Positive checklist to help you attract top talent and reduce team turnover. Download this checklist at workpositive.today/checklist. Remember, it pays to work positive.